All right, that's going to do it for part one. Hang in for part two. But as always, if you have any questions or comments, please put them below and I'll be sure to answer them as I'm able. Thank you.
So let's give us some space here. Now we need to create a variable here that's going to hold all of the answers to our questions, which are all of the answers that the Magic 8 Ball would actually respond with. So I actually have all of this typed out here, so I'm literally just going to copy this, paste it in here, so I don't have to do it all again. But again, this code will be available, so you'll be able to see all of this. So the first thing we want to do is we have to declare the variable or the array that's going to hold all of the answers. So we're going to call that, we're going to make it private, we're going to call it answers, and we're going to tell it it can hold up to 20 values. And all of those values are represented as a string. And a string is just a bunch of text. So you can see below here, so answers in index number 0. Now that's the thing with most programming languages. In the case of an array can hold certain values, and each value is identified by an index. And the index is the number that's held within the parentheses right here. So this answers array can hold up to 20 values, and the first one starts with 0. So you have answers with an index of 0 equals it is certain. And then answers number 1 equals it is decidedly so. You can read these, I don't need to read them all. But basically there's from 0 to 19 is actually 20 values, 20 values of strings. So I've already done all this, so I didn't feel like typing it all out to try to make this video a little bit shorter. So these are all the answers that could possibly come up when you ask a question. So in addition to that, we also want to keep track of the last question that was asked. Now you don't have to do this. I'm doing it so that just so you can see things you can do with this program. So basically, if you ask a question and it gives you an answer, and then you don't change anything, you leave the same question in there and you hit the ask button again, or you press enter on the text field, it's going to give you another notification saying, hey, I already answered that one. Do something, ask me something else. So that's what this last question variable is going to keep track of. And because what you're typing in the question box is in fact a string, it's text, we have to set this as a string as well. Now you notice that rather than using private here, I used dim. You can use either one. They are interchangeable, more or less, but actually dim is going to be deprecated. So I didn't realize that I had put that in my first example. So it doesn't really matter, but I'm going to change this to private anyway. So now this variable is only accessible in this program. Basically, all right, so we already have our layout all set. So now we need to say what happens when you click the button or when you hit enter on the text field. So rather than writing the same code more than once, I'm going to create a new subroutine that both of these events, the click event for the button and the action event for the text box, they're just going to point at the new subroutine so that they both run the same code. So I don't have to type it more than once, making our code way longer than it needs to be and messy. It's sometimes called spaghetti code or smelly code or something like that, which you want to avoid as often as possible. And it's a time saver anyway, because that way you're only typing code once rather than multiple times. And as we get into other projects, you'll see why that could easily happen. The subroutine that I'm going to create, and I guess I'll create that right now below here, is sub give answer, which makes perfect sense. Now when I press enter, it automatically puts the end sub there. So now I can take this give answer, put that in the click event for the button and the action event for the text. So now whenever you click the button or press enter on the text field, it's automatically going to run this subroutine give answer. So all of our code for the Magic 8 Ball is going to go in this routine here. Okay, so the first thing to do is to make sure that the question box is not empty, meaning there's no text in there whatsoever, because it can't answer nothing. If nobody asks a question, there's no reason to answer it. So what we're going to do is we're going to check for the condition of the text box with the if keyword. So if txt, and you'll notice that I got two things that pop up here. I have the text question. Well, there's a last exception there too, but that's just because it's noticing that txt somehow exists in there. But you can forget that. So we have txt question, which is our actual physical button, and the txt question action event, which is this event up here. We don't need to reference this, so we're just going to use txt question, and we're going to check for the text in that question, so the text property. And you always, after you type in the object, you want to hit a dot, and the dot will bring up any characteristics of that object that are available to you. In this case, the characteristic of a text field would be its text, what's actually in the text field itself. So if text question.text equals, now anytime you type text into the code, it always has to be enclosed in quotation marks. So that's actually what I did here. There's two quotation marks, but I left it like with nothing in between them. So it's just two, one right after the other. And that basically means nothing, empty. So if text question.text equals nothing, then hit enter. It automatically adds your end if. So now if it is empty, we want to tell them you must enter something, a yes or no question. So we're going to change the, is it text? No, it's a label, because all right, so we're going to change the answer label to display a message telling them you got to enter something. So we know it's a label answers. That's what we want. And it has a text property as well. Okay, so what do we want it to say if the question is empty? We want to display a message in the answer box. We don't have to. We could leave it blank and just nothing happens. But we want to be user-friendly as much as possible. So we're going to say that must ask a yes or no question. End the quotes. So now whenever somebody clicks on the button and there's nothing in the text field, they're going to get this message, must ask a yes or no question in the label. And I think we actually should be able to run that as is, just so you can see that that works. Let's try it. We'll run. Wait for it. Okay, so we have some things here. Oh, I know what we did. All right, so okay, let's clear that out. Let's go up to the top here in this region. Now we have it automatically set to 600 by 600. That should be 800 by 800. And I think that will fix the problem. Let's run it. Yep, that's a little better. We could probably shorten this up a little bit, but it displays the correct layout now. And that just goes to show you that different layouts can have different views. You can have totally different looks on each variant or layout that you have. So, all right, so here's our question. So if we leave this blank, this is the prompt. There's no actual text in there. If I click in here, there's nothing there. So if I can either hit enter right now or hit click ask button. There you go, hit ask. There's nothing in here. It says must ask a yes or no question. And if I just hit, you're not going to see it because it's just going to say the same thing. But if I just hit enter on this, it's the same thing. So it's you know, just so you can see it, let's rerun it. Just hit enter here. Must ask a yes or no question. So same thing whether you press the button or you press enter on the text field when there's absolutely nothing in it. So perfect, it works. And it looks like that's pretty long and it fit right in there nice, so that's great. Close it. Go back down to the give answer text box. All right, so what else do we need to check for? We need to, I guess, give an answer if there is something in the text field. So now we want to do an else if, because we're checking for another condition. Actually, we're not going to do the else if just yet. Let's just use else. So basically there's one condition. If it's true, then it's going to type this. If it's not true, it's going to type what we do now. So now we want to answer the question, essentially. So whatever it is, no matter what they type in there, we're not going to really check to see if it's actually a question or if it's even worded right or if it's even a yes or no question, because that's on the user. We've given them instructions that it should be a yes or no question, so that's going to have to be good enough. So let's say they do ask a question. and they hit enter, what are we going to do? We need to give them one of the responses up here. So you can see each one, the variable we're looking for is called answers, and it has an index. So we're just going to randomly pick an index between 0 and 19, and then give them the response. We didn't do this above for a reason. I just want to show you that you can declare dimension, choose private, a variable pretty much anywhere in your code. But there's a reason for doing that sometimes. So right now we're going to do private. We're going to call it magic answer. And there's a reason for doing it this way too. Lowercase, the first word starts with a lowercase letter, and the second word and any corresponding words after that are capitalized. It's a naming convention. It's similar to what's called camel case, where the first letter of each word is capitalized, but in this case, the very first word is not, and any subsequent word is capitalized. There are reasons for doing that. Not truly important. It's more if you have a team of people programming on the same program, then everybody knows what is what. So what we're going to need to do, so private magic answer as an integer, because it's just going to be a number, a whole number. There's no fractions or anything like that. So as an integer, and now we can actually assign it a value right now. So we're going to assign it a random number, RND, random, put parentheses, and so we need to give it a minimum value and a maximum value. Now the minimum value is included in the results, and the maximum value is excluded. That's important. So the first value we want to give it a 0, because we could have 0 could be one of the answers we got, because you can see it index starts at 0. So we need 0, and give it a comma, and now we need the maximum value. Now the maximum value is 19, but if we put 19, it's not going to include 19, so we have to give it 20. So 19 and 20. So it's going to give it a random number between 0 and 19, all included. So now we take that magic answer, and so now we're going to put the answer that it picked into the label. So now we put label answer text equals, it's going to equal the text in the variable that was chosen. So we're going to do answers, and in parentheses, we're going to put magic answer, because this is the number of the index that we're trying to pull up. So now we're going to do magic, and I like how it pulls everything right up for you. Hit tab and enters it, and then close parentheses. So now whatever it chooses is going to show up in that box. So let's give it a test right now. It should actually work. Okay, I'm going to run it. Okay, so let's ask it a question. Can I have more money? Whether you, again, it doesn't really care what's in here as long as there's something in here. So hit ask. It is certain. Oh, sweet. Love it. So as of right now, if I hit ask again, it's just going to keep giving me a different answer because it's not checking to see if I've already asked this question or not, which is fine. You don't even have to do that. But again, I like to do it anyway. So I can hit this. Better not tell you now. Outlook good. Outlook not so good. See, it's giving me. And the reason I like to remember what it asked before and not let it ask that same question again, at least not one right after the other, is because you could get a positive and a negative response, which would conflict, and that doesn't really help. So right now it's actually working as is, and you could call this a day if you wanted to, but we're going to put in a few user-friendly things here. If there's nothing in the box, it's just going to tell you must ask a yes or no question. If there is something in the box, it gives you one of the magic answers above, based on a random value generated by this code here, the magic answer, which is given a random value from 0 to 19, which matches the index numbers of the answers array that we created earlier. Now we want to check and see if it matches the last answer or not. So actually in this same area, we want to assign the question that was asked to the last question variable up here. So I'm going to copy that. So now we're going to do last question equals txt question text. So, excuse me, now it's going to take the text that's in the question box right now and assign it to last question. So now we're remembering what the last question was. In order to actually use that, we have to check the answer to see if it matches the last one or not. So we're actually going to add an additional if statement into this if block, but we're going to do it before the else block. So hit enter up there, hit the backspace key to back out, and do else if text question dot text equals last question, rather than again, enter. So if the text in the text question box equals the last question that was answered, you got to remember this is going to run over and over and over again. So when you click the button or hit enter, it's going to come in and start from the beginning. It's going to see if it's blank, then it's going to give an answer. If it is, it's going to check to see if the text matches the last question that was asked. And if it does, we're going to give them another message here. So label answer text equals I already answered that! Exclamation point. And then it's going to skip the else, and that's all it's going to print. It's going to print I already answered that, and then it's going to skip everything else until you ask it another question. So it's basically not going to give you an answer again. So this actually might be done, but let's run it again. Okay. Will I win the lottery? Seems like I'm all about money, huh? Not so much, but wouldn't hurt. All right, so now ask the question. Signs point to yes. Sweet. Just got to figure out my numbers now. But now, if I hit ask again, because I've already asked this question and I didn't change anything, so now if I hit ask again, I already answered that. It won't answer it again. No matter how many times I click it, or I click over here, hit enter, makes no difference. I already answered that. So I can actually, it's stupid simple to bypass this. I can just get rid of that character, and now it's a different question as far as the program is concerned. It's not that smart. So if I ask again, it is decidedly so. I'm loving these answers for sure. But that's pretty much it. So now if I hit again, oh, I already answered that. Again, if I change it back to what it was before, it has a very short memory. And hit enter. Oh, wait a minute. Oh yeah, so it's going to answer it the first time. Right, because it doesn't remember that 2 questions ago I already answered it. It only remembers the very last question I answered. And simply getting rid of the punctuation was enough to change it, so it gave another answer. But if I ask it again, I already answered that. I'll go back to that again. So basically, that is pretty much it. You now have a Magic 8-Ball program that is functional, and hopefully you've learned a thing or two about if, else, and if. So basically you're checking for different conditions of the program, and you're responding to each possible outcome, because sometimes users can throw stuff at you that you're not expecting, so you have to kind of account for as many possible scenarios as you can think of. So if somebody hits enter on an empty text field, okay, maybe nothing happens, but you got to at least let them know that, so that they can take the next steps, or actually put an actual question in. And again, just one more thing here. When you're running a program, it actually doesn't even care what you put in there. It's not that smart. So I can hit ask. Yes, definitely. Sure, why not? But again, same thing. If I don't change anything, it already answered it, and we're good. So that's going to do it for this tutorial. I hope you learned something. Please leave any questions or comments below, and I'll be sure to answer whatever I can. And hopefully this was helpful, and let's keep programming. Thank you.